Hi everyone, welcome back. Wow, what an amazing crowd. As always, gets better every single week. Who's here for the first time? Put your hands up. Any first timers over here? Wow. That's pretty good. Delighted to have you. Welcome. So for those people who've not joined us, and those who have, we're doing a weekly series on Emunah. Is that me? Sorry. Thank you. We good?
I don't know.
We'll find out in a second. Great. Okay, so we're doing a series on Emunah, faith and bitachon. Today we're going to go a little bit different from what we've been discussing so far. Every talk a rabbi gives kind of falls into one of two categories. Either it's on religion or it's on spirituality. Now, when it comes to rabbis publicizing classes, rarely do we go with the religion topic because no one wants to go to a talk on religion. But spirituality and growth and faith, hopefully, is going to be tonight's main discussion. There's something which has become a major challenge in all relationships that we're involved in. And when we talk about emunah, faith, what we're really talking about when it comes to it is faith in God and a relationship with God. Because everyone is expected to build their own personal relationship with God. That's the premise of everything we're talking about. So however you understand those words and how you relate to them is up to you. I can tell you how to keep Shabbat. I can tell you how to keep kosher. I can tell you how not to worship an idol. Any idol worshippers here? Any American idol worshippers here? However, when it comes to emunah, it's a very personal thing. One of the things that is getting in the way of all relationships and our relationship with God, emunah, is what I want to call the delusion of control. You see, everyone is trying to control everybody else. Husbands are trying to control their wives, wives are trying to control their husbands. Parents are trying to control their kids, and kids are trying to control their parents. Congregations are trying to control their rabbis, and the rabbis are trying to control their congregations. Everybody is trying to control everybody else. But the secret of tonight's discussion is that nobody is controlling anybody else. It's a delusion. And this delusion has a major repercussion in all of our relationships, and especially our emunah, our faith. And we hold on to this desire to control other people, especially in relationships and a relationship with God as well. It's all one thing. Relationships are just relationships. Have you ever seen a bird sleeping on a wire or a branch? Have you ever wondered why they don't fall off? They just kind of like sit there, asleep, and you wonder, 1 second, if I try to fall asleep on a branch or a wire, or any of us, we just fall off, right? But birds don't. Anybody know why? Because birds have this unique quality, something that I think is called lock claw. And what that is their claws will hold onto that pole, hold onto that wire very tightly, even while they sleep. So when we sleep, we're kind of like limp and loose. But birds aren't. Which means birds have the ability to fall asleep on a branch, or a pole or a wire, and yet stay in one place without the fear of falling off. Many of us are walking around with lock claw. We think we're relaxed, and we think we are tranquil and serene, but unfortunately, we are holding on for dear life. And this gets in the way of our relationships. It's like a messianic complex, Many people don't believe in God, not because they've had any proof to believe God or not believe in God. It's because believing in God means you have to give up a little bit of control. Right? You've got to give up some control, What you really want to do is be in control of everything that happens to you, your business, your relationships, your kids, your family, your friends. But in the end, we're going to show you this evening that's impossible. And actually, you don't want to be in control. Because if you are going to be in control of everything that happens in your life, then all the bad stuff is your fault. And all the good stuff, that happens is going to be a manifestation of your own ego. And so giving up control over friendships, over relationships, over your relationship with God, especially emunah bitachon, is going to be very, very important. Now this delusion of control is pretty new, right? How did people used to get around in the old days? What was the mode of transportation that people would use to get around with? Horses, right? Horse and buggy, I don't know, maybe an elephant, if you came from parts of the Middle East, right? Or a donkey. And you had a relationship with this horse, right? And when you wanted to go straight, you just kind of just sat there. And if you wanted to make a right turn, you had to pull on the rein, and the bit in the mouth of the horse would get uncomfortable, and so the horse would release itself to the right. Now, people knew they weren't in control of the horse, right? They were just making it an offer that the horse couldn't resist, and that was pain. Was the horse able, if it wanted to at times, to give up its control to you, the rider? The answer is absolutely. If the horse wanted to. But most of the time, he weren't able to. Could the horse overcome your control over it in order to go and run and eat something that it wanted and flick you off its back? It could do that. So people were always living with a reality that we're not in control. We're just offering the horse an offer it can't refuse. But if it really wants to refuse it, it can. And now we have these amazing cars. And they're more sophisticated than they ever were before. I mean, your average car that comes off the production line today, my dear friends, has more technology on board than, I think it's safe to say, those early rockets that went up to the moon, right? The Apollo 15 missions. Think about it. We are driving objects that have more technology on board than rockets that took people into space. It's an amazing thing. But there's a problem with that, and that is we constantly feel we're in control. So now we've sent this rover, just think about it for a few minutes, it's worth thinking about. We sent this rover to Mars. What an amazing accomplishment. It's really amazing how much we've achieved technologically. And you send it off, and it goes millions, if not billions of miles, and all these satellites, they go out so far. And we're like, that's great, but there's one problem that comes with that. And that is, when you want this rover to go left up there, billions of miles away, it's going to make a left turn. And you want it to go right, there's someone sitting in, I don't know, Texas or wherever they are, Florida, moving that little joystick right, moving it a bit left, and it's going, hi, welcome. That's okay. Take a seat. And it feels, and it knows it's being moved left and right, and it moves just as you want it to. There's a problem though, there's a challenge of this level of control that we now have in society. And that is, if I can control a satellite millions of miles away, if I can change and move a rover billions of miles away, then obviously I can control my wife who's in the bedroom near me, right? And I control my kids, and I control my husband who's sitting next to me on the couch. Obviously I can. I mean, what would make you think that I can't? With the amount of level of control that we now have on everything. Now think about the toys you used to have. I'm going to age myself now a little bit, right? I'm 22. But when I was a kid, right, we used to have little toy cars that used to do this, you know, this thing? And you let go, and it would go, woo, right? And it would hit the wall. And then you'd have to get up, walk over to that car next to the wall, pick it up, turn it around, and start all over again until it made its way across the room to the other wall. I'm not saying how great the old days were, right? And then, anybody remember Atari? Remember the Atari thing? I got an Atari. I was one of the first ones in my class. I was the coolest kid ever. And we had a game called Pong. Remember Pong? It was basically two little things like this that would go up, and there was a ball that went blip with maybe 3 pixels. Right, it went blip, and you'd have to have a little wheel, it would go up and hit the thing, and it would go bounce, it would go back again. And you felt like, wow, I couldn't believe this is amazing. The amount of technology I as a kid had, right? And it was so cool. My friends would come over, and the console was made of wood. It was like wood paneling on my Atari. I mean, dude, I would actually like that right now, right? It's like amazing. And now, my son has got a drone. And he's flying over and what was that? He's like, I'm just videoing you, I'll upload it later. I'm like, what? How did this happen? There's a level of control that kids have right now, which is good and fine. I'm not saying don't buy this stuff, but be aware. Because when it comes to interpersonal relationships, and relationships with Hashem, God, which is what Emunah really is, a relationship with Hashem, God, then why can't I just control everything? Because my entire life, I'm controlling everything around me. I'm thinking about supermarkets today, right? There's actually a book I picked up. I didn't buy it, but I picked it up. I read through a few pages. I think it was called Cluttered. Cluttered was the name of this book. And part of this book was discussing how many objects we now have in our homes. You go back 100 years and centuries before that, millennia, how many objects do you think people had in their homes? Not that many. Maybe like 20 or 30. You basically had like a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, right? And you had maybe like a little bit of oil, a couple of pots, a few plates, and that was it. Today, I read this like 15 years ago, it's probably a lot more. The average home, here in the Western world anyway, has 200,000 objects. Think about it. Every piece of clothing, every screw, every nail. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff we're constantly presiding over all the time. That's going to influence us. Go to supermarkets today. Everything you want. Everything is perfectly wrapped and looks great. All the meat is wrapped in plastic, ready to go. My kids, most kids probably grow up thinking that piece of meat was attached to an animal. Are you sure? Are you sure it doesn't grow with plastic around it on the actual animal itself? Or just show a kid today. I remember growing up, in the old days. Growing up, my grandmother used to pluck feathers out of the chicken and actually singe it with fire. Do you remember this? And now, if my kids see one feather on a piece of chicken, they're screaming. I'm like, this chicken actually was covered in feathers at one point until it was completely plucked. But they can't even fathom that because everything is sanitized and cleaned and prepared, ready to go. Think about an apple. Have you ever seen an apple on a tree as opposed to an apple in the supermarket? You know the apples in the supermarkets? They're actually covered in wax. I didn't realize that. It's edible. I don't know if it's killing you, but it's waxed. And it's put in this perfect pyramid pattern for you to pick it up. And as a kid, you want to pull the bottom off and it just rolls off, Have you seen an apple on a tree? It's the most boring fruit in the entire world. It just sits there covered in dirt. But that's not good enough. Because everything has to be manufactured and manicured and cleaned and prepared. And all the weird fruit, my father-in-law, God bless him, came to visit me. This is a true story, a couple of weeks ago, for the first time in a while, and he brought this is true, a bag of cherries this big. I was like, that's a lot of cherries. He goes, they were very cheap. Israel, very, very cheap. Cost me like $3 for the entire bag. I was like, wow, are they rotten? No. And I took them out. They were the freakiest looking cherries. Each one looked like very strange looking cherries, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I can't eat these. It's like, why not? They taste as good. I know, but they just look disgusting. These are the ones that no one buys because everything has to be manufactured perfectly. So there's a lot of fruits and vegetables that you don't get to eat because they don't live up to the expectation. We're controlling everything. Everything in the supermarket's lined up and beautiful. All the fruits and vegetables, it's gonna impact us. You may be thinking, well, what's the big problem? What's the big deal? So what? So our grandparents knew and understood that they were not in control, and we don't fully get it, so we think we're in control of everything. There's a problem that comes with that. And I've spoken about this before, but I'll talk about it again. Here are one of the challenges that comes from this delusion of control that we all have in our lives today. Check this out. I went to a rabbinical conference a number of years ago, which I don't suggest you to. They're pretty boring. But I was at this rabbinical conference, and at the end there was a dais. Did I tell you this before, this story? It's very cool. Check this out. And I went to this, and at the end, they had like, experts up on the stage who took questions from the audience, and they had a psychiatrist, a doctor, a rabbi, social workers, the usual, And somebody ended up and said, I've got a question for the panel. And there's like 200 people over there. What is the reason for the high divorce rates? What's the reason for high divorce rates? And everyone had their own answers. Not enough love, not enough caring, we're too busy, all the usual stuff. And there was a psychiatrist up on the dais, who I've mentioned before. His name is Dr. Abraham Tversky. He just passed away this past year. And he did the following. I saw him with my own eyes. He did the following. Picked up a cup like this, and he said, "This is the reason for high divorce rates." And he put the cup down, and he sat down as Zoe. And we were like, the guy's taking his own meds. Definitely he's out of it. And he said, let me explain. And he said something quite profound. He says we've created a disposable culture. Everything we have, we use until we don't want to or can't, and we throw it away, and we get a new one. And when I came bar mitzvah, I was given a pen as a gift. You know the one with the white blob on top, the Mont Blanc thing, which I thought was a Star of David? It's not. Anyway, I got this pen, and I like this pen. I had a relationship with it. I mean, not like a relationship, my lovely pen, but you actually build a relationship with the pen. And when I used to lend it out, I used to hold on to the cap because I knew I wanted the pen back. And I had this pen for years. I went through high school with it, and I got to go to university, maybe afterwards, and then eventually I lost it. But I had this object that I felt a connection to. Now, my pocket, I have, actually this pen actually is probably, this is the best pen by the way, just so you know. But you know what? It really is. Right, but you know what's going to happen? I'm going to use it, throw it away, and get a new one. It's gone. Your phone breaks. Walk into Apple or Samsung, wherever you get your phone from. After 2-3 years using your phone, listen, my phone's broken. I have no issue. Can you fix it? They're like, sure I can. Cost you $300. We get a new one for $500 or whatever it is. It's not worth it. Throw it away. Get a new one. Something breaks in your car. The windshield wiper. They don't fix the windshield wiper. They rip it off. They throw it away. And they get a new one. Think about it. Your pen breaks, throw away, get a new one. Your plastic cups, throw away, get a new one. Your marriage breaks, throw it away, get a new one. It's disposable culture. There's just so much of it. We're in control of every object in our homes. It happens to be a side point, this is not a discussion for now. But in Judaism, we actually put sanctity into physical objects. In a Jewish home, we have the candles, right? The lights, the candlesticks that have been passed down, right? From Safta. We'll have a Siddur, or we'll have a Megillah, or we'll have a menorah. These things, it's very weird for us. Yeah, sure, Rabbi. But it's a very unusual thing that we put sanctity into physical objects. I have a friend of mine, grew up very, very, very secular Jewish person, and he went to synagogue once a year, and he saw someone drop the Siddur on the floor. And then he saw him pick it up and kiss it. And he's like, that is the weirdest, non-Jews don't do that. They don't drop the Constitution on the floor, pick it up and go, mwah! They don't do that. That's really weird. There is nothing else that I know of in secular world where we put so much love and holiness, kedusha, into these physical objects. And mezuzah, this impacts our children, the tzedakah box, you name it. But having books about this impacted him a lot. He said he became religious many years later, and seeing someone kiss a siddur impacted his brain. And bringing out the Torah, people go up to him, put a hand on and kiss it. It's an amazing thing. Don't belittle it. Sanctifying physical objects and saying these things matter and these things count. Teach that to your kids. I mean, waiting is no longer acceptable, right? I mean, like, speed has become an obsession. I mean, you can get one car that goes 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. We can spend a few $1,000s more, and it goes 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds. And you're like, that's worth it. I mean, what are you going to do with that fraction of a second later on in the day, right? When all is said and done, well, forget about that, all right? That's irrelevant. But just have speed. I mean, there was an episode of The Simpsons. Is that show still on? I don't even know, to be honest with you. When I grew up, it was all Simpsons, Simpson quotes. We were obsessed with The Simpsons, you know? So if I remember correctly, Thursday night in the Simpson home was Meatloaf night. Was that right? Anybody remember that? I don't know. I'm going back. Whatever it was. There's one episode, by the way, really was, Simpson was really, I don't know if it is now, but it really was the best understanding of pop culture of what's happening in society. There's one episode of Homer Simpson standing by the microwave, I don't forget this, standing by the microwave, and it's counting down like a minute. So he's making his dinner in 1 minute. All right? 1 minute for dinner, and it's counting down, and it reaches like 5 seconds before he's like, why do you have to take so long? It's like, dude, it's got 3. And we like to do that, right? Are you like me? Do you like to stop the microwave at like 2 seconds left? If you're actually like taking with the dynamite, you know, just pulling out, you know, it's a great feeling. Then you stop it. I've defused the bomb. It's not going to blow up now. It's a great feeling. But it's a control thing. That's really what it comes down to, yeah? When I was younger, the best feeling I used to have was getting a letter in the mail. So let me explain what that was. It used to be in the old days, there used to be like a box inside your house, and someone would give you a letter. It would come, it was written on paper. Now, paper is an object that came from trees, and it was pulped and flattened, and I'm joking, but I'm not. Right? And anyone receive a letter? It was a great feeling. Oh, someone actually sat down and wrote your name out. They wrote it with their own hand. And they filled up an entire piece of paper. Right? On Valentine's Day, I used to get nothing. But the rest of the year, I used to receive these cards, and someone actually thought about me and wrote a whole page just for me. They couldn't cut and paste it. They were stuck writing an entire letter. And now, I get email. And it's just cut and pasted and gross. And I go to the mailbox now. I just know it's people wanting my money. It's horrible. For some reason, every piece of mail I get now is someone asking for my money and not giving it. Strange that. Right now, you go, oh God, go to the mailbox for more bills. When you're a kid, oh, it felt so good. And you would open it up and you would unfold it. It was a great feeling. You know, someone actually spent the time to do that for you. We have this desire for immediate gratification. I'm as guilty as all of you. I bought a fast car. I'm not driving an old jalopy. But we want immediate gratification. I can't have it now. I'll tell you something fascinating. You're going to love this. I've mentioned before that one of the things I did when I was in rabbinical school, everyone took on like voluntary kind of positions. Some worked in pulpits and some worked in kashrut. So I worked with drug dealers. And it's fun. Got to make a living. And, drug addicts who are in recovery, actually. Some were actually drug dealers as well. And I used to go to these weekends away, and I went to this, I got a qualification in it, I got a certificate, and we were working with these teenagers. This is this amazing story. I haven't told this in a long time. We're sitting with these teenagers, and there was a social worker / rabbi who was with me, and he said, kids, I got a treat for you today. Listen to this. This is mind-blowing. It's going to change your life. I said, I got a treat for you. Yeah? He said, yeah, we're not going to talk about your addictions and your disease and I need to get over it. No. He went to his pocket and he pulled out a pile of pills, colored pills. And he says, each one of you is going to get a pill. Not only that, it's going to give you the most exquisite high you've ever had in your entire life. It's going to blow you away. Not only that, $1 a pill. I mean, these kids, suddenly they picked up, I tell you. Ears went up, eyes went ding, you know, like in the cartoons, the tongue went, you know. Steam started coming there. They got so excited. So a few of them jump forward to grab one of the pills. He goes, not so fast. There's a catch. There's a catch. Because what's the catch? I'll tell you the catch. The pill is going to give you an amazing high. And it is only $1 a hit. But the high from this pill is not going to kick in for 24 hours. You're going to feel nothing for 24 hours, and then you're going to get the high. Did you know not one of those kids took a pill? I'm not interested in that. Because when I take drugs, alright, when I want to eat that cheesecake, and when I want to eat that, and I want to go with that girl or that guy, and I want it now. I can't defer 24 hours. I can't do that. And so not one teenager took a pill. And they were basically admitting that they want the high right now, or they don't want it at all. That's epic, isn't it? Can you imagine that? What proof to what we're all desiring is immediate now and not deferring. And they've done these experiments on kids. Any young child who's able, you see they put marshmallows in front of them, and they go away and come back, right? And if you haven't eaten it in 5 minutes, they see it's actually a very good indicator of the future of the child, right? You get 2 marshmallows, just wait 5 minutes. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And you see these kids, and they are struggling. They are fighting this desire, and it's just fun to watch, right? Nothing better watching kids being tortured. I mean, not in a bad way, you know, but at least in this form, at least, you know. And most of the kids can't handle it, and they'll pick it up, or they'll smell it, they'll take a little nibble from it, right? And they'll take a little bite, and eventually it's poof, right in. Because 2 in 5 minutes, I want one right now. Let's get a little bit deeper over there. I want to talk about kids for a second. I get a lot of calls from a lot of people, with problems with their kids. Usually the kids are, in their 20s and 30s. In their 20s and 30s, and they're having challenges. Maybe they don't like the person they're dating, or don't like their job, or their attitude, or maybe they have a drug problem, whatever it is. And I always hear them say the same thing. They always say this. And you've heard this as well. I don't understand. When they were young, they were so good. They were the best child ever. I don't know what happened. You should see, and I'll take out this massive photo that says a poster. Look how cute they were. They weren't, they were very ugly. But that's not the point. Look how cute they were, my little bubbler. And we had such a good relationship. And she's such a good little boy, little girl. And I don't know what happened. And suddenly I lost control. And I try to explain to them, you were never in control. You thought you were, but you cannot control anyone else. It's a delusion, and it's affecting your relationship with them. Think about the child. The kid wants to have chocolate before dinner, or whatever. And you're like, no, you cannot have the chocolate. That's it. Now the kid wants the chocolate. Or they want that candy, or whatever it is. Or they want to go and hang out with those friends at the 7-Eleven where they're hanging out these days, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. All right, they want to go to the club, and they want to do. And you're like, no. And if you don't do it, I'm going to ground you, or take away, and not give you, or take away your credit card, or take away your cup. You'll threaten. Now the kid, very young, are able to figure this out. And they're like, okay, I'll buy into this whole control thing. I'm going to let you, Imma Abba, believe that you're in control of me. So I'm going to sign a contract. I mean, not an actual contract, but a contract of sorts. And this contract's going to be that I'm going to listen to you because I need stuff. So you say no chocolate before dinner, fine, because I need you to give me pocket money so I can go buy stuff. But don't make any mistake, because at some point, I'm going to be old enough to afford my own chocolate and date who I want to date and hang out with whoever I want to hang out with. And that document, which I signed when I was 5 years old, I'm going to rip it up. It's obsolete. It doesn't apply anymore. Now, you need to realize that this contract is breakable. We parents, we don't believe that. We think that our little boo, like a little cute boy or girl who always listens so nicely to mommy and daddy, is always going to do that. But no, that's just not true. Because at some point they're going to have some form of independence, and some kids get it in their teens, some in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s. And they turn around and be like, we're done. That was good when I was 5 or 6, but that doesn't apply anymore. You're not in control of me, because actually you were never in control. You are giving me an offer that I couldn't refuse. Just like that horse that guy or girl was riding 100 years ago. You gave the horse an offer it couldn't refuse. If it did refuse, you gave it some pain. And you could do that to a 5-year-old, 10, maybe a 15-year-old. But at some point, I'm done. You do you, and I'll do me. And that's when they come crying to the rabbi, or the therapist, or the doctor, or the psychiatrist. I don't understand, it doesn't make sense. He was always so good. He was only good because you gave him an offer he couldn't refuse. And now, he can refuse it. The child hasn't changed. You've changed. You're not understanding that this offer had a time limit on it. I mean, you see it with kids, right? When they try to poop. Teach a kid how to poop. You ever seen that? Well, first you've got to feed the kid. Right? And what are kids like? They're like, come on, open your mouth, for Abba, for Imma. Food's going in. And what do the kids always do? The natural instinct always is, Now they want it. You know they want it. Although, when you try to feed them like, Because if you were to leave that food next to them and go to the kitchen, when you get back, they're going to shove it in their face. And usually all over their body. And so the child needs to eat. And so you can dip as much as you want. And eventually you'll bribe them, or do what I do, the train thing, which I still try with my 15-year-olds. It's not funny or cute anymore. Here comes the train, open up. That's all well and good. But when it comes to the poop, then the kid's like, oh no. You see, you got the food in, but I'm going to tell you when it comes out. And you'll put that little cute baby on the potty. You're like, come on, make for him and Abba. No. Screw you. I'll poo when I'm ready. Come on. And when do they always poo? Excuse me for being so graphic. When you pick up the baby and you move it off and something like, it's a control thing. It really is. Unfortunately, it's cute when you're 5 or 6. It's not cute when you're dealing with teenagers and adults who will just be so belligerent. And it's like, I'm going to refuse all forms of control. You've got to give this delusion up because you're not in control. You can't control your parents, and your parents can't control you, and you can't control your husband. The idea that things must be done my way is the biggest marriage killer alive. Forget everything else. It's got to be done my way. When I hear a couple complain about, I don't know, drugs and arguments and in-laws, we have what to work with. But when I hear them say, it's got to be done this way, why? Because I said so. Houston, we have a problem. It's a control issue, and it's very, very hard to overturn that. There's a twist to this whole discussion. There is a twist. And it goes like this. Who are the people who are actually in control? They're the ones that say, I'm not in control. The person who gives, lets go and lets God, you've heard that expression, addicts use all the time. The people who can actually honestly say, I'm not in control. I can't control my kids. I can't control my spouse. I can't control anything. Everything's out of my control. Ironically, that person is really in control. They're getting control over their life. It's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't make sense. The person who says, I'm not in control, boom, they're in control. I went to one of these drug retreats, and there was a fascinating, I wish I could have filmed what happened on Shabbat. This Hasidic rabbi's qualification. Basically him describing his journey. What they do is they basically qualify, they describe their addiction and how it affects them. This particular Hasidic Jew had taken every single drug you can imagine. There wasn't an object that he had injected, snorted, and swallowed during his crazy addictive behaviors. And his life had become, as we say, unmanageable, and he'd lost control. And by the way, when do people start to enter recovery? What's the classic, which is all of us really, right? Because we're all dealing with stuff. When you hit rock bottom, and everyone's got a different rock bottom, right? For some people, it may be losing their wife, right? For somebody, maybe losing their husband, maybe losing their job, maybe losing their sanity, losing their home, right? Everyone's got a different bottom, right? They hit it, and then eventually they get back. So this guy eventually hit his rock bottom. By the way, and this is personal to the story, what he used to do, we're going back, like 40 years before I met him. When I met him, he was already heavily into his recovery and would actually go to these addiction retreats and bring a Sefer Torah. So any religious Jews were there would have a minyan. I'm not even kidding you. A very, very holy person. Once he was in recovery, right? So he's talking and he explained how he used to, during his acting out days, look for women of the night, should we say, and go up and down the West Side Highway. And he used to cruise. Right? The West Side Highway now is beautiful, right? There's all these like gentrified people strolling on their bicycles, right? And walking and enjoying themselves. It didn't used to be that way. Go back to the 60s and 70s, it was a pretty horrific place, And it was a good place to pick up drugs and, women. And he had drug dealers there. So he went into recovery and he used to work and do business with a lot of people in Manhattan. So he's told me, listen to this unbelievable story. There's so much wisdom in this story. He was talking about he would drive up and down the West Side Highway in recovery, and he would have this desire to act out, and he'd feel the steering wheel while it was going up West Side Highway turning towards his old, haunts to pick up drugs and women and all this other stuff, and he didn't want to. And so he realized he's out of control because the desire was too strong, and he had succumbed on many, many occasions and had to start all over again. And once someone like that spirals out of control, those friends, right? For some of us, we just take an extra drink or something and we're able to put the brakes on and stop. An alcoholic drug addict, they don't have those brakes. They're missing from their hippocampus or cerebellum, wherever it's kept, right? They know this next drink is going to completely knock me out and I'm going to be under the table, right? Wallowing my own vomit or saying or doing ridiculous things. They just can't control that. That's really what an addict basically is. And so he said, I'm out of control. I can't do this. So what did he do? He admitted he's out of control. And he said the following. He said, what I'm going to do is, now I'm not saying this is for everyone here, but it's worth knowing there's people who live in this world who aspire to such a standard. He says, I'm never going to drive on the West Side Highway again. And people are like, what are you talking about? Just drive and control yourself. He's like, I can't control myself. I'm out of control. And my life is going to spiral out of control, and the wife's going to leave me again, and the kids aren't going to speak to me again for 3-4 years, and I don't want that. So I'm going to drive the West Side Highway. By the way, anyone who knows Manhattan traffic, pre-corona, would know how crazy that is. That means every time you had a meeting on the West Side Highway, you'd have to go up the east side and cut across town, right? And the cross town takes longer than actually reaching Manhattan, right, for most people in most parts of it. So he's adding 30-40 minutes to his journey. You're like, take control. He's like, I can't. You're in control of your life. You see? That's how you take control. By admitting and saying, God, I'm out of control. I've lost my way. That's emunah. That's handing over all your challenges and problems to God. I'm not saying you shouldn't tackle things and forget about everything and I'm not in control. There are things you can control, but don't think you control everything. And if you've got something that's unmanageable in your life, that is exactly what you're left with. By the way, for us, the Jewish people, we have a control center that teaches us we're not in control. Anyone know what that is? What part of Jewish life is basically saying, I'm not in control of anything? Shabbat, yeah, thank you. We're not in control. I can't even kill a fly. I can't drive, I can't take my horse, I can't do any of that. That means we Jewish people, ideally, spend a seventh of our lives living in a world which we are not in control of. And if something happens, I'm like, I can't control that. I wish I could. And the phone could ring. I tell my kids this. They don't believe me, they think I'm completely nuts. I'm like, the phone's ringing, and I say, you know something amazing? That phone can ring and ring and ring and ring. And I can know for a fact that if I pick up the phone, there could be a deal waiting for me where I could make $1 billion. I know for a fact. But if I don't answer the phone, I don't get that money. I cannot pick up that phone. And people think, wow, what a terrible life. Right? What a terrible, unorthodox life you're living now. Where you have no control of anything. And the answer is, that is power. Power is the ability to say that I don't need to pick up that phone right now. That's an amazing thing. My kids were like, could you ask the cleaning lady to pick it up? Right? And speak in your behalf and make the $1 billion. I'm like, it don't work that way. That's control. That's not God controlling us. That's us taking control of our lives in a good, healthy way. We're able to say, no, not now. And if I miss out on that $1 billion, although it may be stabbing me, and if there's people holier than me, which there are plenty, they'll be delighted with me. I'm like, well, that hurts. Right? But that's what Shem says, you know. It's like my kids. I used to take my kids to the supermarket, and they used to always cry for candy or something. I'm like, I'm not buying any more candy. And the kids are shouting and screaming, right? Or they'll do the most manipulative control. What do kids do to get control? They lay on the floor, on their backs, and just scream, "Da!" Normally, I'm like, take whatever you want. Just shut up. Just take it. That's my parenting. You can ask my wife. My daughters complain. I'm like, take all the money you want. Just hey, give me a kiss. Off you go, man. You want the new shoes, the new outfit? Take it off. I got no money left anyway. You've taken it all anyway. But if I say to my kid, oh, you want that? You can't have that chocolate. It's not kasher. The argument's over. Wow. What a skill. What a technique. What a beautiful thing to teach a child. That a 5-year-old child is able to say, I really want that candy. I really want that gum. I really want that chocolate. I'm dying. Oh, it's not kosher? Oh, that's something else. Oh, not kosher? No, I can't have that. I'll find something else to complain about in 2 minutes. But now, I'm able to defer my gratification. Wow. I mean, if you teach that to your kids, dayenu. That's a beautiful thing. Right? I don't know if there's an equivalent in the secular world. Right? But it's definitely true for us. That we're teaching kids to give up. And teaching kids to put a coin in the tzedakah box, in the pushka. Like, why are you giving your money away? I'm like, I'm not, hey, you go put it in. It's a beautiful thing. I'm like, but I want to use that money myself. I'm like, that's not your money. That belongs to that poor person, right? And I do it to my kids. If I see a poor person in the street, I don't always give. You're not halakhically required to always, but sometimes you do, and I'll give them, and I'm like, go give it to the child. Give it to that person. Right? And they'll give it over. The act of giving impacts the child tremendously. Deferring gratification. I want that chocolate so much, but I know I can't. I want to keep that money so much, but it has to go to tzedakah. And Abba tells me that 10% of the money that you earn is your money. It's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. Now, there are various methods of control that we use in relationships. Relationships with each other and relationships with Hashem, with God. Anger, shouting, right? It's a form of control. Guilt, every Jewish mother's favorite. These are forms of control. And there's passive control, and there's aggressive control. I mean, that child who doesn't want to make on the potty until, they're ready, until I'll tell you when. It's cute when you're 5. Right? But when you're 35, it ain't cute anymore. Right? Don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it in my time. And that's when the control has to be given up. And that's the lesson we have to teach our children and ourselves as early as possible. And we'll finish with, we could talk a lot more on this, but Rabbi Reuben is waiting. I want to just share one expression of Chazal, of our rabbis, that sums up everything I've told you this evening. When it comes to emunah, bitachon, giving up this delusion of control. And that is, Hakol b'dei shemayim, chutz miyirat shemayim. Yeah. Everything is in the hands of heaven, except for the fear of heaven. What does that mean? Everything's in the hands of heaven. That means ultimately, God is going to decide what we get, who we marry, how much money. We believe that all of that is ordained. Are we zocher to it? It depends. God can ordain that you can marry that person or get that money. Right? It's like your parents. They can say, I got $1 million for you. Like, great! I get $1 million. But you're going to have to go to the bank to pick it up, or you're going to have to call me once in a while in order for the payouts to keep coming, Hashem's the same way. Everything's in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven, meaning that small window of the hira of free will that's left in our hands are the moral and ethical choices that we make in life. That's really what we're trying to do over here. Because we're not in control. Hashem is in control of everything. And the quicker we learn to do that and live like that, the quicker we'll be able to unlock those claws that we're just holding on. One last thing came to mind. There's been a lot of tragedies and atrocities that have happened to the world and to the Jewish people specifically over the past, 5-6 months. One of the things a friend of mine, psychiatrist, told actually to me in relation to September 11, that's what he told it to me, but it applies to all of these things as well. And that is, he said, one of the things that has really affected people from all these things is the realization that we're not in control. Right? The buildings fall and there's anti-Semitism and all these things are happening. We're like, what can I do about it? And some things you just can do nothing about. Why are they happening? Hakol b'dei shemayim, I don't know. But the psychological damage that goes on for years after this is the realization that I'm not in control of my own life. Right? There's a plague, there's a virus, there's buildings, there's challenges, and these things impact us. As soon as we give up control, Hakol b'dei shemayim kicks in, and the emunah factor and the bitachon in Hashem, because once you let go, then you can let God. And that's the punchline. Thank you all so much for listening. It's been a long talk. I went on longer than normal. There's food coming out now, and Rabbi Abragamov is going to follow with his shiur as well. Thank you everyone for coming this evening. Great to see you. Great crowd.